Part 39. This person is mine. All belongs to me, Bai Xuelan alone. On the other side of Xuan Huaifeng, he didn't know about Bai Yunfei's family. And he was fascinated by the fact that he was sitting in the car. When they arrived at Nian's house, Xuan Dian and Zhang Ma were overjoyed when they saw him. And immediately called everyone in a row, just to scavenge the delicious food in the mansion. It happened that Nian Liangfu were on vacation. And they were staying at home to accompany the wife who was flattering and expecting to give birth, and also hurriedly joined the ranks of the reception. It was so lively and bustling that Xuan Huaifeng was also refreshed. With a smile, he asked his sister and her husband, and then asked Zhang Ma with a smile. Sitting in the living room and looking around, he was a little surprised and asked, "I haven't been here for a few days. How do I think this house has changed?" Xuan Dian smiled and said, "Really? It's your brother-in-law's idea. He said that you should find someone to look at geomancy. So, I invited a famous gentleman to come and fiddle with it for a few days. Here we need to change the threshold, and we need to remove the window there. After all, it's actually more work than changing a house. He is itchy when he saves a little money in his hand. And he has bought a lot of new Western furniture, and even got a new big copper bed. Nian Liangfu has been prosperous in official affairs recently, and he is even fatter than before. His belly is protruding, and he laughs. Madam, you have wronged me too much. I spent money on new furniture, not for you to live in. Are you comfortable? As a man, I always want my women and children to be comfortable. Even if I spend a little more money, you will be happy." Huaifeng. Are you right? Xuan Huaifeng certainly hopes that his sister will have a good life, but there was a little doubt in his heart. Although my brother-in-law became the director, the money might not be too generous. He didn't want to spoil the atmosphere, so he just smiled lightly. Brother-in-law, elder sister is a very content person. In my opinion, I don't care about these fancy things. Such a big family will add people and spend money in the future. There are more places. The salary of the customs office is also limited. So it is better to be frugal. Nian Liangfu and good-hearted. That's right, that's right. Your current adjutant-in-chief speaks all knowledgeable words. I will listen to you. He turned back to his smiling face and said with great interest, "Madam, it is rare to come home with Huaifeng. Take out the bottles of good white wine I have hidden, and drink it for dinner." Everyone is happy. The family talked and laughed for a while, and when the hour came, the servant came here to invite them. In the dining room, a table of hot dishes was placed early, and the dishes and chopsticks were laid out. When everyone went to the dining room and sat at the table, Xuan Huaifeng saw that Zhang Ma was sweating on her neck, so he asked her to sit down and eat together. Zhang Ma insisted, and she still stood by Xuan Huaifeng's side, happily holding chopsticks to help him prepare dishes. Nian Liangfu really opened the seal of the good liquor in his possession. Regardless of Xuan Huaifeng's refusal, he forced him to fill it up, and shouted to persuade, "Your sister has this body so she can't drink it. It's rare for you to come. How many times to accompany your brother-in-law for 2 glasses? Appreciate your face." Xuan Huaifeng was helpless and drank a few cups. Xuan Dian was relieved to see that they were in harmony. She drank the fashionable Western fruit juice and ate the vegetables slowly, and said with a smile, "Huaifeng, you can't drink too much when you go outside, but it's different at my sister's house. It's okay to stay here for the night if you're drunk." Zhang Ma nodded in agreement. "That's right. I've cleaned the little young master's bed. After a night's sleep, you'll leave." As a result, it was difficult for them to be happy. He barely drank 3 or 4 more glasses. "After a meal, I was so drunk that even the furniture in front of me shook." Originally intending to stay for 1 night, inadvertently his eyes slanted into the yard. vaguely remembering the last time he was drunk in Nian's house at night, and he was suddenly frightened. And he refused to stay in any case. The excuse said that he promised Bai Xuelan that he must go back that night, thank his brother-in-law and sister, and just got in the car and went back to the White Mansion. When I got into the car, I was still brave, and I opened the door to sit in the car. When he arrived in front of the White Mansion, he couldn't hold it any longer, his vision was blurred, his knees were soft, and the night wind blew. He couldn't even tell the difference between east, west, north and south, so panicked that the guards hurriedly supported him. The servants did not dare to neglect, and hurried in to report to the chief. Bai Xuelan was waiting for him in the study while approving the official documents. When he heard that the adjutant Xuan was drunk, he hurried out after losing the official documents. He dragged Xuan Huaifeng into the bedroom half-holding, helped him undress, and said with a smile, "If I give you a day off, you will be like this." "I can't see it." Bai Xuelan rolled up his sleeves, wiped Xuan Huaifeng's face, and took out the sobering stone, asking Xuan Huaifeng to hold it in his mouth. Xuan Huaifeng's alcohol intake has always been light, and when he gets drunk by chance, he is more than 100 times more willful than usual. No matter what Bai Xuelan says, he just shakes his head from side to side and refuses to put the sober stone in his mouth. Suddenly, he frowns again and whispers, shouting, "No, my heart is pounding. It's so uncomfortable." His cloudy perfect face was full of wind, and the wind was flowing into his bones. Between the words, a rush of sweet wine rushed to Bai Xuelan's face. Bai Xuelan's body was covered in blood, and it seemed that it was burning on the stove. Last night, because Xuan Huaifeng said that his stomach was uncomfortable, he didn't succeed. Today, he couldn't be more polite. So, he smiled and said, "Is your heart beating so fast? I'll help you smooth it out." The little shirt inside Xuan Huaifeng ate the wine, and was shouting hot. Suddenly felt a coolness on his body, but leaned against Bai Xuelan's arm comfortably, and said indistinctly, "I won't drink anymore." Bai Xuelan said, "It's true. I'd rather you drink a few more times." One arm hugged Xuan Huaifeng, the other hand placed on his chest, and the fingertips rubbed closely on the small protruding point, making it stand up and harden up. Xuan Huaifeng seemed to feel that something was wrong, shook his head, slightly turned his head slightly, and asked Bai Xuelan, "What are you doing?" Bai Xuelan saw his star-eyed expression, half of his soul had flown, and said with a low smile, "Don't you know if you do it?" Xuan Huaifeng felt itchy and soft all over by him, shrank his neck and twisted his waist slightly. Seeing Bai Xuelan laughing, he also laughed ignorantly, with two thin lips. With the color of wine, the rouge is translucent, and it is seductive. Bai Xuelan couldn't help but leaned in and kissed him. He put his tongue into Xuan Huaifeng's mouth, wrapped in soft cloves, and slowly sucked in the sweet body fluid. He kissed Xuan Huaifeng until his chest hurt a little, hummed and protested slightly, and then let go. After a while, even the fabric under Xuan Huaifeng faded away. Xuan Huaifeng felt hot at first, but now he felt cold again. Half of the skin on his bare calf was against the brass trim of the big bed. Looking at himself, he asked in a daze, "What are you doing with my clothes off?" Bai Xuelan said softly, "Is it cold? Can I warm you up?" Into both knees, slowly up. As soon as his legs were opened, Xuan Huaifeng frowned. Although he was drunk, he still vaguely knew something. He staggered on the bed and wanted to sit up, but Bai Xuelan smiled and gently pressed it again so he fell back. Being caressed lightly and carelessly in a place where no one can be seen, Xuan Huaifeng's heart beat faster and faster, as if he was about to jump out of his throat. He barely held the attentive hand between his legs, half closed his eyes, panting and asking, "Who? What are you doing? Who are you?" Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "You don't even recognize that little thing. You're so drunk." He lowered his body and kissed him on his forehead, nose, lips and cheeks at one point. Xuan Huaifeng gasped for a while, and found that the hand was moving on his body again, and it had the intention of being more arrogant, so he quickly pressed it down again, and asked in a low voice like in a dream, "Qijun, is that you?" Bai Xuelan's face turned pale. Just like on a hot day, a person who was sweating all over suddenly fell into the ice hole of the severe winter, and suddenly froze from top to bottom. From the inside to the outside. Chilled all over. Cold to the core. Can't think of anything. With a little thought in his mind. The limbs and body that were hardened into cold iron were about to crack and shatter. Turned into slag, crushed into ashes. In an instant, the gentle eyes turned terrifyingly twisted and ferocious. And he always wanted to slap the handsome and flawless face he loved most, and wake up this damn bastard and make him stunned. The beating made the corners of his mouth and nose bleed. He was beaten to the point of weeping bitterly, pained by the fact that he had broken his heart like this, and knelt down and begged for mercy. If it wasn't for the cold that enveloped him like 1,000 pounds, and if his body wasn't so stiff that he couldn't move a finger, Bai Xuelan felt that he must have done it without hesitation. "I can't wait to kill this ruthless." Even the breath out of his nose was cold. Staring at the person lying on the bed, who brought him infinite joy and sweetness just now. Xuan Huaifeng didn't notice it at all. He only knew in a trance that the naughty hand that was stroking and touching his body finally stopped. He still pressed his hand lightly and mumbled vaguely, "Is that you? What are you doing here at my sister's house? It's almost midnight." It was like muttering to himself. Words of a drunk person. Bai Xuelan listened to his low, nice and gentle voice. A sourness that couldn't help rushing up. He knew that these words were not meant for him. It was said to Lin Qijun. Xuan Huaifeng, even if he was drunk, there was only Lin Qijun in his mouth. What about Bai Xuelan? Not even light smoke, not even ash. The more Bai Xuelan thought about it, the more sour it became. The heavier the sourness. The more unable to suppress the humiliation and resentment in his heart, and his eyes gradually turned evil. Right, Bai Xuelan thought fiercely. Lin Qijun is a fart. No matter how well we weave a bamboo basket, it cannot catch the moon. No matter how beautiful the mirror is, it's just a mirror. This delicate and rare person, from hair to toes, every bit of skin, every drop of sweet liquid, belongs to me, Bai Xuelan. What he eats, wears, touches, plays with, sleeps, and watches are all my Bai Xuelan's things. Even the air I breathe is the air in my Bai Xuelan's mansion. Away from the troubled world, free love is a fart. Plato is a shit. From now on, 3 times the number of people will come to guard his mansion. Xuan Huaifeng will not be allowed to answer any phone calls. Xuan Huaifeng will not be allowed to go out on leave. Not even an hour's leave, or even going to his sister's house. Lin Qijun never wanted to touch a hair of his, and even looking at him from a distance was a dream. Cut them off to death. And they are not allowed to be side by side in this life. This person is mine. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. I hug every day, kiss every day, I will come if I am strong. And the smell of my Bai Xuelan, glory also melts him. I won't give Lin Qijun a bit of scum. Bai Xuelan thought in a messy and vicious manner, grinding his teeth silently. His blood was originally cold, it turned into ice, and his heart was about to turn to ashes. At this moment, it suddenly became hot like boiling water because of jealousy. Suddenly, he bent down again, as if his interest was doubled, caressed greedily and eagerly, bowed his head and kissed Xuan Huaifeng's strong abdomen. It was quiet for a moment. Xuan Huaifeng was about to fall asleep in the drunken town, and now he was half awake by the caress. Still reluctant to open his eyes, frowned and said, "What are you doing?" "Sister. I'm sleepy." Bai Xuelan had coldness in his eyes, but his voice and movements became softer, turning him over gently. He licked the breathtakingly beautiful butterfly-shaped birthmark covering his lower back. His fingers rummaged through the entrance and dived into it little by little. Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be a little frightened by this action. The muscles on his back tightened and he wanted to turn over, but Bai Xuelan pressed a palm on his shoulder and pressed him. Xuan Huaifeng was unable to turn over, turned his face away, and could not see the person behind him, so he was confused. And he asked anxiously, Who is it? Qijun. Is it you?" The effect of alcohol was too great. He opened his eyes slightly, but his vision was still blurry, swaying gently like floating on a lake. At this moment, as well as the night in the cellar of my sister's house, there are many kinds of wines mixed together, as if a dozen kinds of foreign wines are mixed, all pouring in, creating a smoky illusion with their brains. Bai Xuelan said nothing, clenched his teeth and turned his wrists skillfully. My heart was so uncomfortable as if my intestines were in one place. But anyway, this is not the first time he has been impersonated by Lin Qijun. As long as it's Bai Xuelan who is holding Xuan Huaifeng, what about counterfeiting? Qijun. Is that you? Xuan Huaifeng shook his head frequently because of his actions, let out a small hum, and said, "No, this is not right." Bai Xuelan pulled the body he was about to curl up straight. Holding the slender and white waist, he lifted it up, and put his body on with his trousers down. As soon as he touched it, Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be scalded. He struggled violently, shook his head and said, "No, I don't want it." Xuan Huaifeng, who didn't know where he got his strength all of a sudden, broke away from Bai Xuelan's palm, took a few steps forward on his hands and feet, and fell to the side of the bed. But he was not fully awake. As soon as he fell, he sat still, didn't move, half tilted his neck, gasping for breath. Star eyes are half open and half closed. The two slender and beautiful calves were brightly colored and opened naturally. Bai Xuelan hated him so much that he gritted his teeth. Seeing him fall, he couldn't help but feel distressed. He quickly got out of bed and picked him up, and put him on the soft mattress. Turned over the back, no bruises. He moved his hand to look again. But there was a piece of skin on the back of his right upper arm, which may have been hit when he fell, and it was rubbed red. Bai Xuelan said angrily in his heart, he deserved it. But he couldn't help caressing the place and asked, "Does it hurt?" What is the use of so many thoughts on a drunk person? Xuan Huaifeng didn't answer at all. I don't know if I understood. Or if the alcoholism came up again, as if I had a headache. He made a vague voice, frowned, and rubbed his forehead against Bai Xuelan's shoulder. Bai Xuelan was ruthless in his heart, and he had no choice but to make him lie flat, raise the hand he wiped, lowered his head to help him breathe a few breaths of warm air, and stuck out his tongue to lick it for disinfecting. After doing this, Xuan Huaifeng felt quite comfortable and closed his eyes and wanted to sleep. Bai Xuelan refused to spare him, turned to kiss his lips, slid down, and bit his Adam's apple while kissing. Open the smooth and flat thighs with both hands and lift the buttocks slightly. Xuan Huaifeng vaguely knew what the man wanted to do. Shook his head and muttered, "No, no." Bai Xuelan laughed in anger and said, "Is this up to you?" Xuan Huaifeng didn't answer him, he just talked to himself, and said vaguely, "No. Bai Xuelan will know." Bai Xuelan was stunned. His heart skipped a beat, then jumped like crazy. He picked up Xuan Huaifeng, wrapped his long arms around his naked and fragrant body, kissed the skin on his shoulders, and asked cryptically, "What if Bai Xuelan knows? What if Bai Xuelan doesn't know? Xuan Huaifeng was drowsy and felt very good in Bai Xuelan's arms. His eyelids drooping to sleep. Bai Xuelan asked several times, but he was silent. He was so anxious that Bai Xuelan took a bite on his shoulder, biting him so hard that Xuan Huaifeng couldn't sleep. So he opened his eyes in confusion, turned his face half drunk and looked at Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan knew that although he was looking at him, he was mostly confused. Xuan Huaifeng had long thought of himself as Lin Qijun, so he deliberately asked, "Is it better for me, or Bai Xuelan?" After waiting for a while, seeing Xuan Huaifeng still stunned, so he changed the way of asking, "If you want to leave Bai Xuelan and live with me, will you be reluctant?" He asked again, "Why do we do such a thing? Are you afraid that Bai Xuelan will know now?" I asked several times in a row. 1. In this state of Xuan Huaifeng, how could he have the energy to use these brains with him? And his eyes slowly dimmed in a daze. Bai Xuelan was in a hurry again, grabbed his shoulders with big hands and shook it, calling out, "Huaifeng, don't sleep, don't sleep." Finally, Xuan Huaifeng gave a soft "N." Bai Xuelan hurriedly coaxed him and said, "My dear, tell me a word or two, and I'll let you sleep soundly." He asked Xuan Huaifeng, "Is Bai Xuelan good to you? Do you like Bai Xuelan? Or do you hate Bai Xuelan? In the end, do you hate him more? Or do you like him more?" Afraid that Xuan Huaifeng would fall asleep again, he asked, shaking him constantly in his arms. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't sleep again, and was rubbed into a state of drowsiness. He was inexplicably lazy and uncomfortable. So, he got angry and shouted, "What does the matter between us have to do with you? Let your Bai Yunfei away." With a snap, he slapped Bai Xuelan's arm, putting his hand on Bai Xuelan's body. He worked hard to separate the two people's bodies. Bai Xuelan's joy was as if he had suddenly ascended to heaven from the 18th floor of hell. The sweetness of his heart almost exploded. He hugged Xuan Huaifeng and forbade him to break free. He said, "What about the two of us? Which of us? How did you and Bai Xuelan become us? We are so close. You have always loved me the most. Why did you ask me to accompany Bai Yunfei? Are you following Bai Xuelan? Oh, you beat me so hard. Are you willing to do so?" Xuan Huaifeng's long-suppressed resentment against Lin Qijun erupted for the first time. However, Bai Xuelan gave him a blow, had fun, stretched out his face for him to pat, and kept saying, "Come on, darling, hit harder. Even if you beat Lin Qijun to death, you'll just follow Bai Xuelan well in the future." At this time, the night was very deep, and ordinary people went to bed early, not to mention Xuan Huaifeng, who drank wine. After a while of fuss, Xuan Huai's air ran out, and he gradually stopped moving and didn't struggle anymore. Leaning his head forward, half of his handsome face was pressed against Bai Xuelan's warm chest. He fell asleep like this.